Artificial sweeteners are a pretty controversial topic. On the one hand, you have the people that love them and that they claim that they pose no negative side effects whatsoever, and on the other hand, you have the people that are extremely wary of them and claim that they cause all sorts of negative problems like cancer. Some people actually claim that artificial sweeteners can promote weight gain. So I did my own research, and in this video we're going to take a look at what the science has to say as to whether or not artificial sweeteners are actually effective for weight loss. Originally, this video was going to cover both the weight management implications but also the health implications of artificial sweeteners. But because there were so many studies to cover, and this video was probably gonna be pretty long already, so I'm splitting this into two parts. In this first part, we're gonna cover whether or not artificial sweeteners can be an effective tool for weight loss. And in the second part, we're gonna cover any potential implications for general health. So let's get started. But first, hey everyone, my name is Andreas. I have a bachelor's degree in nutrition and dietetics. On this channel, we're going to be analyzing and discussing the science behind many nutrition and fitness related topics, but also psychology that comes into play when you're trying to get in shape and stay healthy. Artificial sweeteners, they've been around for decades. In fact, saccharin was the first artificial sweetener ever produced back in 1879. Artificial sweeteners are very prevalent in the modern era. They are found in a ton of sugar-free drinks or low-calorie sweets, and their implications on both health and weight are a subject of controversy. Now, before we take a look at what the science has to say, first we need to establish what an artificial sweetener actually is. You may see them go by different names such as non-nutritive sweeteners or high-intensity sweeteners. Non-nutritive because they offer no nutritional value, or so no carbohydrates or calories, and high-intensity because they have been found to be several hundred times sweeter than sugar. Artificial sweeteners share some common criteria. A, they need to be able to enhance the sweetness of a food or a beverage. B, they need to be synthetic or man-made, hence the term artificial. And C, they provide zero or almost zero calories, definitely much less calories and carbohydrates than a common sweetener like sugar. The most common examples of artificial sweeteners found in the market are everyone's favorite Hey Target, aspartame, sucralose aka Splenda, saccharin, acysulfate potassium or ACE-K, neotame, and advantame. Now, stevia exists within a somewhat complicated gray zone. It's usually classified as what we call a novel sweetener. Now, I did a little bit of research and I couldn't actually find any concrete definition for what a novel sweetener actually is. Even Mayo Clinic states that a novel sweetener is pretty hard to fit into any particular category. Yes, stevia does technically come from natural origins. It is derived from a plant after all, but it still does undergo quite a bit of refinement. Just keep in mind that the FDA doesn't actually allow crude stevia extracts or whole stevia leaves to be used as food additives. So for the purposes of this video, I'm gonna consider stevia to be an artificial sweetener, just like everything else in this list. Now, starting off, let's take a look at how artificial sweeteners can potentially affect our weight. And that's actually a pretty complicated and difficult thing to answer. When talking about weight, we always need to see things within the correct context. So first, let's take a look at artificial sweeteners' relationship with weight loss. Let's get the obvious out of the way first. Can artificial sweeteners directly induce weight loss? No, they can't. They don't provide any fat burning or metabolic raising effects. The way that artificial sweeteners can aid weight loss is by acting out as zero-calorie or lower-calorie alternatives to sugar or other nutritive sweeteners. As I mentioned in my previous video, stored adipose tissue or fat is simply extra energy that is stored that our body has no further use for. We measure energy consumed via food with calories. So by consuming less calories than you burn every day, i.e. being in a calorie deficit, your body will have to compensate for that missing energy by taking a little bit from its storage, i.e. fat tissue. So if you drank 2 cans of regular sugar sweetened soda every day and then you swap those cans for 2 cans of diet soda, then by definition, artificial sweeteners would have aided in your weight loss simply because they would have saved you a few hundred calories, making it a little bit easier to stick to that calorie deficit. And it would seem that it should be that simple, right? Just swap the sugar in your diet with some artificial sweeteners, save yourself a few hundred calories, and just make it a little bit easier to stick into a calorie deficit that we just established is the most important factor when it comes to weight loss. Well, a lot of the research actually points out that artificial sweeteners may actually have a positive relationship with weight loss instead of a negative, as we would expect. So, like we did with weight loss, we're gonna look at whether or not artificial sweeteners can cause direct weight gain. Like if you drank a cup of Diet Coke and like immediately you gain half a pound of fat, or if they can promote weight gain through indirect means. So for example, maybe by stimulating appetite and causing you to eat more food or more calories. Now let's start with the easiest. Can artificial sweeteners directly cause weight gain? In one randomized crossover study, they took 30 healthy male subjects and gave them a beverage either containing monk fruit, aspartame, sugar, or stevia. This was done mid-morning after a standardized breakfast. We're gonna come back to this study a bit later on, but what's important for us right now is that none of the artificial sweeteners actually caused an increase in blood glucose or insulin levels when consumed, as opposed to sucrose, which did increase both. Now, why would we care about that? Well, because a popular argument made by the people that support that artificial sweeteners can actually induce weight gain is the fact that artificial sweeteners may actually increase insulin levels when consumed. For those of you that don't know, insulin is basically the hormone responsible for transferring food components from our blood, mainly glucose, into our body tissues, for example, fat tissues. An increase in insulin levels could potentially cause our body to store up excess fat by using more glucose that is found in the bloodstream without us actually eating any more meals. But there are two main problems with this argument. First, if artificial sweeteners did indeed cause an insulin spike, and you happen to be in a fasted state, then you would definitely be experiencing symptoms of hypoglycemia, at least if the insulin spike was significant. If you are a healthy person, then your blood glucose levels in a fasted state are gonna be relatively low. If you experienced any significant insulin spike without an additional increase in blood sugar, then you would definitely be experiencing some symptoms of hypoglycemia. You would feel tired and lethargic at best, and at worst you could even potentially fall into a coma. Although admittedly that's a pretty extreme case. I don't actually drink diet sodas fasted. To be honest with you guys, I almost never drink diet sodas in the first place. So if any of you have any experience with drinking diet sodas while you're in a fasted state, maybe you're intermittent fasting, let us know in the comments if you ever experienced any symptoms of hypoglycemia, like feeling tired, feeling lethargic, dizziness, etc., etc. That said, I haven't heard of anyone experiencing serious hypoglycemia symptoms while drinking Diet Coke. I'm not saying that it's impossible for artificial sweeteners to cause an insulin spike. I'm just saying that even if they did, it probably wouldn't be big enough to matter. The second problem is that if you happen to consume the artificial sweetener along with a full meal, as most people do, then the insulin spike actually caused from the artificial sweetener would be greatly overshadowed by the insulin spike that would be caused from the actual meal, effectively making it irrelevant. Again though, there's really not much research to prove that artificial sweeteners cause an insulin spike in the first place. From what I found, any study that supports this was actually done on animals like rats and not humans. In another randomized double-blind study, they gave 50 individuals a carbonated beverage, either sweetened with ACE-K or just not sweetened at all, and they found no differences between insulin secretion estimates. Now, there are some studies that associate artificial sweetener consumption with weight gain, but not directly. Several studies support the idea that artificial sweeteners can actually stimulate appetite and cause excess food consumption. In one study, they found that by exposing rats for a certain period of time to sweet beverages that actually didn't contain any calories or any calorie content, that the rats would eventually disassociate the sweet taste with caloric content. So when they were given a sweet tasting beverage or a sweet tasting food, they actually consumed more of that food or beverage in relation to the control group, but they didn't actually consume any more non-sweet food or beverage. So if you spend 2 weeks drinking Diet Coke and then went on to eat a cake, you could potentially eat the whole cake because your brain has disassociated the sweet taste with caloric content. A possible explanation for this is something we call the Pavlovian Theory, which is obviously named after the famous Ivan Pavlov, that discovered that dogs salivate when they hear a buzz that they have been conditioned to associate with having their meal. The idea is that we are naturally predisposed to associate sweet-tasting foods with energy or calories, but by constantly exposing ourselves to sweet-tasting foods that actually contain no energy or calories, that we actually break that association. So when we finally do consume something sweet and with calories, our brain doesn't actually realize that we're consuming nutritional content, and so theoretically it's much more likely that we're gonna overeat. Now, there are a ton of caveats when it comes to these findings. For all we know, humans may have much more different and much more complex regulatory mechanics when it comes to how much we actually eat and how much we need to eat to feel full. It's always been my belief that satiety levels are actually regulated by two things. First, yes, the calorie content of the food that you're consuming, but second, the actual food volume, which I dare say is even more important than the caloric content of the food. If satiety was simply regulated through calorie consumption, then you could potentially eat, 10 cups of raw salad without the dressing or oils, etc., and still feel no full at all, simply because you would only be consuming, 200 to 300 calories. But I would dare say that if you eat 10 cups of raw salad, you're gonna be feeling pretty full, even if you do get hungry in, an hour or two. And the same would hold true conversely. So if you ate half a large bag of chips, then you would be feeling pretty full if satiety levels were simply regulated through calorie consumption. But I don't know who you are, but you probably don't just stop at half the bag. The point that I'm trying to make is that calorie content isn't the only thing that defines how full we're gonna be after a meal. Like I said a few moments ago, I think food volume is an even more important factor when it comes to feeling full and keeping satiety levels high. So for example, eating lots of proteins and fiber is probably gonna make you feel much more full than eating lots of simple carbohydrates. Another problem that I personally have with this idea is that, let's say you're eating a chocolate bar, right? You're probably not stopping at one chocolate bar because you're feeling full. You're probably stopping at one chocolate bar because if you eat any more chocolate bars, you're gonna need 2 cutting seasons this year back to back instead of 1. You're stopping consciously, not for some subconscious feeling your body gives you that you're full and that you don't need to eat anymore. You're stopping consciously because you yourself don't want to eat anymore. Looking at this from a realistic viewpoint, even if the hypothesis is true, it doesn't actually seem that it's gonna affect your diet or the way that you eat all that much. In another study, 14 female students were actually given either sucrose-infused lemonade, aspartame-infused lemonade, or just mineral water 4 times a day for 3 separate days. The rest of the diet was left ad libitum. On the second day, the women that actually consumed the sucrose-infused beverage actually ate less calories through the overall day than the women that consumed the aspartame-infused beverage. So basically, the women that consumed the aspartame-infused beverage overcompensated for that lack of calories through their beverage via their food. Now, I couldn't find the full study, and to be honest, this abstract leaves room for a lot of questions. Now, it's not that I can't imagine a sweet beverage that contains no calories to mess up your appetite a little bit and cause you to overcompensate by eating more food later in the day, but the research has been inconclusive as to this point at least. And to be honest, even if this hypothesis is true, I doubt that it would actually be in any high enough degree or significant enough degree that would actually harm your diet. Furthermore, a lot more studies actually support the idea that artificial sweeteners have no significant effect on appetite or hunger. For example, this review study actually concluded that even though the research on whether or not artificial sweeteners can stimulate appetite and hunger is inconclusive, it favors that they don't. In another study, 21 overweight individuals were supplemented with either sucrose-infused beverages or artificial sweetener-infused beverages for 10 weeks while leaving the rest of the diet ad libitum. After the 10 weeks, the individuals that consumed the sucrose-infused beverages had increased energy intake and body weight in relation to the individuals that consumed the artificial sweetener-infused beverages. For now, there's not a lot of research that convinces me that artificial sweeteners can potentially impact weight loss, let alone harm it. The important question is whether or not you should be consuming artificial sweeteners, and I think this is a question that you yourself need to answer by looking at things from a critical viewpoint. At the end of the day, any diet that is effective, meaning it enables you to lose weight at a reasonable pace while preserving muscle mass, is going to work. The most important factor is consistency. I would prefer if you followed a somewhat clean, reasonably effective diet for 12 weeks rather than you following a super clean, really effective diet for 2 weeks. If you find that diet sodas and low-calorie ice creams are things that enable you to enjoy your diet much more, and by extension making it much easier to follow consistently, then by all means keep having them. The research is just not enough to prove that artificial sweeteners can actually harm your weight loss progress. In any case, thank you for watching, everyone. Remember, I'm gonna be releasing part 2, which is gonna cover the health implications of artificial sweeteners pretty soon, so stay tuned. If you like the content and are interested in seeing more, then feel free to subscribe and also hit the notification bell. Also, make sure to tell me down in the comments what topics you'd like me to cover and also any feedback that you could give me. Thank you for watching, everyone. I'll see you in the next video.